Standing in Dean Morrison's sterile administrative office at Harvard Medical School, I stared at the withdrawal notice that had arrived without my knowledge. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead as my world collapsed around me. My father's voice crackled through the speakerphone with cold finality. "Family comes first, Basil. We're investing Sarah's college fund in a private tutoring program so she can reapply next year. You'll have to find another way." My younger sister, the golden child, had spoken through our parents once again. 4 years of perfect grades, sleepless nights, studying for the MCATs, and countless sacrifices meant nothing. The dream of becoming a surgeon that I had nurtured since childhood crumbled in that moment, reduced to nothing more than collateral damage in my family's twisted priorities. The 3-hour drive home to our sprawling colonial house in Greenwich, Connecticut, felt like a funeral procession. My hands gripped the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white, replaying the conversation with Dean Morrison over and over. How could my parents just stop paying tuition without telling me? How could they destroy my future so casually? Walking through the front door, the familiar scent of my mother's lavender candles should have been comforting. Instead, it felt suffocating. The house looked exactly the same with its pristine marble foyer and crystal chandelier, but everything felt different, poisoned. My parents, Robert and Linda, sat waiting in the formal dining room like judges at a tribunal. The mahogany table was set with their finest china as if this were some celebration rather than my execution. Sarah lounged in her chair wearing the Harvard Medical School sweatshirt I had given her last Christmas, a cruel irony that made my stomach twist. "Sit down, son," my father said, gesturing to the chair across from them. His tone held the same authority he used in business meetings, cold and transactional. Robert had built his insurance empire through calculated decisions, and apparently sacrificing his eldest child was just another strategic move. Before I could speak, he slid a thick manila folder across the polished wood surface. "We've done extensive research on Harvard's policies." He began opening the folder to reveal pages of legal documents and university regulations. "There's an obscure provision that allows academic merit scholarships to be transferred between immediate family members under exceptional circumstances." My blood ran cold as I realized what he was suggesting. "You want me to give my scholarship to Sarah?" "Request the transfer." My mother interjected, her voice saccharine sweet. Linda had always been the master manipulator of the family, hiding her cruelty behind a veneer of maternal concern. "Sarah needs this opportunity now. You're smart enough to get in somewhere else later." I stared at my sister, waiting for her to object, to defend me, to show even a shred of guilt. Instead, she smiled that practiced pageant smile that had won her homecoming queen 3 years running. "It's just fair, Basil," she said with mock sincerity. "You've always been the lucky one with grades. Now it's my turn to shine." Lucky. As if the countless hours I spent studying while she went to parties was luck. As if my perfect GPA was some cosmic accident rather than years of dedication. Sarah scored 200 points lower than me on the MCATs. I said, my voice barely controlled. She failed organic chemistry twice. What makes you think she can handle Harvard Medical School? My father's face darkened. Your sister has qualities that matter more than test scores. She has charisma, social connections, and the personality needed to succeed in medicine. Doctors need to relate to people, not just memorize textbooks. The insult hit like a physical blow. According to my own father, I was nothing more than a socially awkward bookworm who happened to test well. We've already told the Hendersons at the country club that Sarah will be starting at Harvard this fall, my mother added, as if their social reputation was more important than my entire future. We can't disappoint them now. I looked around the room that had witnessed countless family dinners, birthday celebrations, and holiday mornings. The portraits of previous generations stared down from the walls, successful men and women who had built the family's wealth and reputation. None of them had ever been asked to sacrifice their dreams for a sibling's failures. "I'm not signing anything," I said firmly. "Sarah can reapply like everyone else who doesn't make the cut." The silence that followed was deafening. My father's jaw tightened, and I could see the businessman in him calculating his next move. When he spoke again, his voice was ice cold. "Then you leave us no choice. Sign the transfer papers and continue to be part of this family, or refuse and be cut off completely. No financial support, no health insurance, no contact. You'll be dead to us." "Robert," my mother said, placing her hand on his arm in a gesture of fake concern, "perhaps we should mention the other issue." My father nodded grimly and pulled out another set of papers. "We've been in contact with the family doctor who treated you for anxiety during high school. If you refuse to cooperate, we'll be forced to inform Harvard's administration about your history of mental health struggles. Universities take these matters very seriously, especially for medical students who will be handling life and death situations." The room spun around me. I had seen a therapist for 3 months during my junior year when the pressure of maintaining perfect grades while dealing with my family's favoritism had become overwhelming. It was completely normal, even healthy, but they were threatening to weaponize it against me. "You would destroy my medical career to get Sarah into a school she's not qualified for? We would do whatever it takes to ensure our daughter gets the opportunities she deserves," my mother replied, without a hint of shame. "Sarah has always been destined for greatness. You're just ordinary with good test scores." The words hung in the air like a death sentence. Ordinary. After everything I had achieved, after all the dreams I had shared with them, after years of making them proud, I was just ordinary. Sarah finally spoke up, but not to defend me. "Besides Basil, you've had your chance to be the star of the family. Don't you think it's selfish to keep hogging all the attention?" I stood up so quickly that my chair fell backward, clattering against the hardwood floor. "This is insane. You're asking me to throw away my future for someone who partied her way through pre-med and thinks mitochondria are a type of Italian pasta." "That's enough," my father roared, slamming his fist on the table. The fine china rattled ominously. "You have until tomorrow morning to decide. Sign the papers and help your sister, or pack your bags and never come back." As I stormed out of the dining room, I caught a glimpse of my reflection in the hallway mirror. For the first time, I looked like a stranger to myself. The dutiful son, the family success story, the one who always made the right choices, had been revealed as nothing more than a placeholder until the real star was ready for her spotlight. I spent the night pacing my childhood bedroom surrounded by academic awards and medical school acceptance letters that now felt like cruel jokes. Sleep was impossible. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Sarah wearing my Harvard sweatshirt and my parents' satisfied smiles as they handed over my future to their precious golden child. By morning, I had made my decision. I would not sign those papers. I would not sacrifice 4 years of my life for their twisted sense of family loyalty. I would find another way to pay for medical school, even if it meant taking out massive loans or deferring for a year. But when I walked downstairs to deliver my refusal, I discovered that my family's betrayal ran much deeper than I had imagined. My mother was on the phone in the kitchen, her voice dripping with false concern. "I'm just so worried about Emma," she was saying to someone on the other end. "She seems like such a sweet girl, but I thought she should know what Basil has been up to at school." Emma, my girlfriend of 2 years, the brilliant pre-law student who had been my anchor through the stress of medical school applications. What lies was my mother telling her? I crept closer to listen, my heart pounding. "I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but we found some very disturbing photos on Basil's computer when we were helping him with his taxes," my mother continued. "Pictures of other women in compromising situations. I think he might be cheating on you, dear. A mother knows these things." The phone call ended, and my mother turned to find me standing in the doorway. Instead of shame or guilt, her face showed only cold satisfaction. "What did you just do?" I whispered. I protected that nice girl from making a mistake, she replied, pouring herself coffee, as if she hadn't just destroyed my relationship with carefully crafted lies. Emma deserves better than someone who can't put family first. I grabbed my phone and immediately tried calling Emma, but it went straight to voicemail. My text messages showed as delivered but unread. She had already blocked me based on my mother's fabricated story. "You're destroying everything," I said, my voice breaking. "We're saving you from distractions," my father said, walking into the kitchen dressed in his business suit. "Young men your age make poor decisions when influenced by hormones and inappropriate relationships." The cruelty was systematic, calculated. They hadn't just threatened my education, they had strategically dismantled my entire support system. But the revelations weren't over. My phone buzzed with a text from my best friend Marcus, someone I had known since middle school. "Dude, why didn't you tell me you thought I was a loser? Your mom called my mom and said you've been talking trash about me behind my back. We're done." Another relationship poisoned by their lies. "How many people have you contacted?" I demanded. "Everyone who matters," Sarah chimed in, bouncing into the kitchen like she was discussing weekend plans. "We had to make sure you wouldn't have anywhere to run when you finally came to your senses." Even Professor Williams, my mentor, who had written glowing recommendation letters for my medical school applications, had received a call. According to my father, someone claiming to be a concerned family member had suggested I was struggling with substance abuse and might not be suitable for the rigors of medical education. "We've thought of everything, Basil," my father said, straightening his tie. "Now are you ready to sign those papers, or do we need to escalate this further?" I looked around the kitchen where I had eaten thousands of meals, done homework at the breakfast bar, and shared my dreams with people I thought loved me. Every surface held memories that now felt contaminated by the knowledge of who these people really were. "I need to get my thing," I said quietly. "There's no need," my mother said brightly. "We've already packed everything important for you." She led me to the garage where 3 cardboard boxes sat next to the trash cans. My entire life had been reduced to donated items, clothes, a few books, my laptop, and the medical textbooks I had bought with money from my part-time job. Everything else, including the awards, trophies, and diplomas that represented years of achievement, had been deemed unimportant. The final humiliation came when Sarah appeared with her phone recording as I loaded the boxes into my Honda Civic. "Just getting some documentation," she said with fake sweetness, "in case we need to show anyone how unstable you've become." My father handed me a manila envelope. "Trespassing papers," he explained matter-of-factly. "If you set foot on this property again without permission, we'll have you arrested." As I drove away from the house where I had grown up, I saw Sarah hanging a Harvard Medical School banner in what used to be my bedroom window. She waved at me cheerfully, as if she were seeing me off on a fun adventure rather than watching me become homeless because of her entitlement. But the cruelest blow came when I tried to return to Harvard to appeal my situation. Dean Morrison looked uncomfortable as he explained that my parents had contacted the school's administration with concerns about my mental health. "They've requested that your enrollment be placed on medical hold pending psychological evaluation," he said, avoiding eye contact. "They claim you've been under severe stress and making threats about self-harm." More lies? More manipulation? They had systematically destroyed not just my current situation, but any possibility of easily recovering from it. The bureaucracy they had set in motion would take months to unravel, and by then my spot in the program would be filled by someone else. I sat in my car in the Harvard parking lot, surrounded by students heading to classes I should have been attending, and finally understood the depth of my family's betrayal. They hadn't just chosen Sarah over me. They had actively conspired to destroy my life to clear the path for hers. The golden child had spoken, and I was officially dead to them. 3 weeks later, I was living in my Honda Civic in a 24-hour Walmart parking lot in Framingham, Massachusetts. The car that had once been my pride and joy, a graduation gift for getting into Harvard, had become my bedroom, office, and dining room. I showered at a local gym using a month-to-month membership and survived on dollar menu items and gas station coffee. The irony wasn't lost on me that I was sleeping in parking lots while my sister was probably already planning her Harvard dorm room decorations with money that should have been paying my tuition. Every morning, I called Harvard's administration, trying to navigate the bureaucratic maze my parents had created. The medical hold on my enrollment required documentation from 3 separate mental health professionals, letters from family members attesting to my stability, and a formal review by a committee that only met once a month. My parents' lawyer had crafted the perfect trap challenging their claims would require resources I didn't have and time I couldn't afford. I had applied to other medical schools, but my incomplete Harvard status and the vague family issues surrounding my departure created red flags that admissions committees couldn't ignore. Most applications required family financial information that my parents refused to provide, effectively freezing me out of the entire system. The lowest point came on a rainy Thursday morning when I woke up to find a parking ticket on my windshield and a security guard knocking on my window. Walmart had policies about overnight parking, and I had overstayed my welcome. As I drove aimlessly through suburban Massachusetts with nowhere to go, I seriously considered giving up entirely. Maybe my parents were right. Maybe I was just ordinary with good test scores. Maybe Sarah really did deserve the opportunities more than I did. That's when my phone rang with a number I didn't recognize. "Basil, this is your Uncle Thomas." I hadn't spoken to my father's younger brother in over 5 years, not since he had been mysteriously excluded from family gatherings. My parents always dismissed him as the black sheep who had made poor life choices, but they never provided details about what had actually happened between them. "I've been trying to track you down for weeks," Thomas continued. "I heard about what Robert and Linda did to you. We need to talk." An hour later, I was sitting across from Thomas in a small diner in Worcester, studying the face that looked so much like my father's, but carried none of his cold calculation. Thomas was weathered in a way that spoke of honest work rather than boardroom politics with calloused hands and sun wrinkles that came from years of physical labor. "Your father did the same thing to me 25 years ago," he said without preamble, stirring sugar into his black coffee. Different circumstances, same pattern of betrayal. The story that emerged over the next 2 hours shattered everything I thought I knew about my family history. Thomas and Robert had started a business together after college, a small insurance agency built on their grandmother's inheritance. The plan was simple. Thomas would handle client relations while Robert managed the financial side. "I was never the smart one like Robert," Thomas explained, "but I was good with people, and we made a great team. At least I thought we did." Within 3 years, Robert had systematically transferred all the business assets into his own name, used legal loopholes to buy out Thomas's share for a fraction of its value, and then spread rumors in their professional community that Thomas was unreliable and possibly stealing from clients. He destroyed my reputation so thoroughly that I couldn't get hired anywhere in the insurance industry. Thomas said, his voice heavy with old pain. "I lost my house my fiancé left me, and I ended up working construction just to survive. Your father erased me from the family history like I never existed." The parallels were horrifying. Robert had perfected the art of betrayal decades ago, and now he was using the same playbook on me. "Why didn't you fight back?" I asked. Thomas smiled grimly. "I did eventually. It just took me 20 years to build up enough evidence. Your father's business practices aren't exactly ethical, Basil. He's been systematically overcharging clients and manipulating policy terms for decades. I've been documenting everything, waiting for the right moment." He reached into his jacket and pulled out a thick folder. Insurance fraud, misrepresentation of coverage terms, and misuse of client trust funds. Robert's empire is built on quicksand, and I've got the paperwork to prove it. But Thomas had more than just evidence of my father's crimes. He had also been building a new life slowly and quietly. His construction company specialized in custom homes for wealthy clients, and he had developed a reputation for quality work and absolute integrity. "The irony is delicious," he said with a bitter laugh. "I'm probably worth more than Robert now, and I sleep well at night knowing I earned every penny honestly." As we talked, I began to understand why my parents had cut Thomas out of our lives. He represented the road not taking the possibility of success without cruelty, the chance that their family values might be questioned. "I want to help you, Basil, but not just out of family loyalty," Thomas said as he paid the check. "I want to help you because you're everything Robert pretended to be: intelligent, ethical, and genuinely committed to helping people. The world needs more doctors, like you're going to be, not fewer." His offer was simple but life-changing: work for his construction company while fighting the Harvard situation. He would provide housing, a decent wage, and most importantly, legal support to unravel the bureaucratic nightmare my parents had created. "There's someone else you need to meet," he said as we walked to our cars. "Dr. Patricia Weston. She's a Harvard alumna and a successful surgeon who got screwed over by your father's business practices. She's been looking for the right opportunity to get revenge, and I think she just found it." The meeting was arranged for the next day at Dr. Weston's private practice in Boston. Walking into her office, I was immediately struck by the wall of diplomas and awards that represented everything I was fighting to achieve. Dr. Patricia Weston was a woman in her 50s with silver hair and sharp eyes that missed nothing. "Your father cost me over $2 million in lost contracts," she said without preamble as I sat down across from her mahogany desk. "His company manipulated my malpractice insurance terms, making it appear that I was a high-risk provider. 3 major hospitals canceled their contracts with my practice based on falsified risk assessments." She leaned forward, her gaze intense. "I've been looking for a way to bring down Robert's company for years, but I needed someone with inside knowledge of his methods. You're not just a victim, Basil. You're a witness to how he operates." Dr. Weston's plan was elegant in its simplicity. She would use her position on Harvard's alumni board to navigate the administrative hold on my enrollment, while Thomas provided evidence of my father's business fraud to state regulators. In exchange, I would document everything I remembered about my father's business practices and help build the case against him. "But here's the thing, Basil," she said, standing up and walking to her window overlooking Boston Harbor. "I don't just want to help you get back into Harvard. I want to help you become something better than what Harvard alone could make you. Are you interested in changing the entire game?" That evening, sitting in the guest bedroom of Thomas's modest but comfortable house, I felt something I hadn't experienced in months: hope. Not just for my own future, but for the possibility that justice might actually exist in a world that had seemed determined to reward cruelty and punish integrity. My phone buzzed with a text from Sarah. "Miss you, big brother. Mom and Dad say you can come home anytime if you just apologize and help me with my Harvard applications. I promise I'll share the spotlight with you." I deleted the message without responding. Some bridges were meant to be burned, and some families were meant to be left behind. Thomas and Dr. Weston were showing me what real family looked like: people who supported your dreams instead of stealing them. Working construction under the scorching summer sun turned out to be exactly what I needed. Every morning at 5:30, I joined Thomas's crew to build custom homes for clients who appreciated quality craftsmanship. The physical labor cleared my mind, while the steady paycheck rebuilt my bank account and my confidence. My co-workers were nothing like the entitled pre-med students I had known at Harvard. These were men and women who understood the value of honest work, who didn't judge success by family connections or trust fund balances. When they learned I was trying to get into medical school, they shared stories of relatives who had overcome similar obstacles, offering encouragement without pity. "College boys usually quit after the first week," said Miguel, the crew foreman, who had been working construction for 15 years. But you're different. You work like you've got something to prove. He was right. Every nail I hammered and every board I cut was a rejection of my parents' claim that I was just an ordinary bookworm. I was building more than houses. I was building a new identity based on merit rather than manipulation. Meanwhile, Dr. Weston was orchestrating a brilliant campaign to restore my academic future. Her connections in the medical community ran deeper than I had realized. As a Harvard alumna who had donated generously to the school for decades, she had access to administrators who could cut through bureaucratic red tape. The key is documentation, she explained during our weekly strategy meetings in her office. We need to prove that your parents' claims about your mental health were fabricated, and we need to do it in a way that makes Harvard look bad for believing them in the first place. She arranged for me to undergo comprehensive psychological evaluations with 3 different mental health professionals, all of whom confirmed what I already knew: I was completely stable and had never posed any risk to myself or others. The anxiety I'd experienced in high school was well within normal ranges for high-achieving students and had been successfully managed through brief counseling. More importantly, Dr. Weston discovered that my parents' lawyer had violated several ethical guidelines when he contacted Harvard on my behalf. Medical holds could only be initiated by licensed healthcare providers or by students themselves, not by family members making unsubstantiated claims. While we were building the case to restore my Harvard enrollment, Dr. Weston encouraged me to apply to other elite medical schools as well. Don't put all your eggs in one basket, she advised. And frankly, there are programs out there that might be even better suited to your goals than Harvard. Her mentorship extended far beyond navigating university bureaucracy. Dr. Weston introduced me to cutting-edge research in pediatric surgery, particularly innovative techniques for treating congenital heart defects in children. Working in her clinic 2 evenings a week, I gained hands-on experience with patient care that most medical students didn't get until their clinical rotations. You have exceptional instincts with children, she observed after watching me comfort a 6-year-old girl who was terrified of getting stitches. Have you considered specializing in pediatric surgery? I had always been drawn to working with children, but my parents had steered me toward more prestigious specialties like cardiothoracic or neurosurgery. According to them, pediatrics was for people who couldn't handle real medicine. Pediatric surgery is some of the most challenging and rewarding work in medicine, Dr. Weston continued. It requires technical precision, emotional intelligence, and the ability to communicate with both young patients and terrified parents. Based on what I've observed, you'd be exceptional at it. While I was rebuilding my academic and professional prospects, Thomas was systematically dismantling my father's business empire. His documentation of Robert's fraudulent practices was meticulous, spanning 2 decades of client complaints, policy manipulations, and misallocated funds. Your father has been running a sophisticated con game, Thomas explained during one of our evening discussions. He charges clients premium rates for comprehensive coverage, then modifies their policies with fine print exclusions that void most claims. When clients complain, he blames the insurance companies and offers to help them sue for coverage they should have had all along. The scheme was diabolical in its complexity. Robert collected fees for legal representation while ensuring that his clients' cases would fail due to the policy modifications he had made himself. Clients paid twice, once for inadequate insurance and again for pointless legal action, while Robert profited from both ends. But Thomas had found something even more damning. Robert had been stealing from the family trust fund that was supposed to pay for both his children's education. The money our grandmother had left specifically for Thomas and Robert's children had been systematically diverted into Robert's personal investment accounts. Sarah's Harvard fund never existed, Thomas revealed, showing me bank statements that made my blood run cold. Robert spent your grandmother's money on stock speculation and country club memberships. When Sarah didn't get into Harvard, he panicked and decided to sacrifice your future to cover his tracks. The betrayal was even deeper than I had realized. My parents hadn't just chosen Sarah over me. They had stolen my inheritance to fund their lifestyle and then used me as a scapegoat when their financial house of cards started collapsing. As summer turned to fall, my applications to other medical schools began bearing fruit. Johns Hopkins invited me for an interview, impressed by my unique background and the recommendation letters Dr. Weston had helped me obtain. The admissions committee was particularly interested in my research experience and my commitment to pediatric medicine. The interview took place on a crisp October morning in Baltimore. Walking through the historic medical campus, I felt a sense of possibility that had been missing from my Harvard experience. This wasn't just about prestige or family expectations. This was about finding my true calling in medicine. Dr. Sarah Chen, the admissions director, was intrigued by my unconventional path. Most applicants come straight from undergraduate programs with perfect linear progressions, she said, reviewing my application. Your story is different. You've overcome significant obstacles, gained real-world work experience, and demonstrated resilience in the face of family rejection. Those qualities matter more than test scores. The interview went better than I had dared to hope. We discussed my research interests, my experience working with Dr. Weston, and my passion for pediatric surgery. When Dr. Chen asked about my family situation, I was honest about the challenges without dwelling on the bitterness. Difficult families can either break us or make us stronger, I said. Mine taught me the importance of choosing the right mentors and surrounding myself with people who share my values. 2 weeks later, the acceptance letter arrived. Not just acceptance, but an offer for Johns Hopkins' accelerated MD-PhD program with full funding, including a research stipendship that would allow me to work on pediatric cardiac surgery innovations. The program was more prestigious than anything Harvard had offered. I would graduate with both medical and doctoral degrees in 6 years instead of 8, and I would be working with some of the most respected researchers in pediatric medicine. But the best part was the letter that accompanied my acceptance packet. Dr. Weston had been invited to serve as my research mentor, officially bringing her groundbreaking work to Johns Hopkins. She was moving her entire research program to Baltimore, creating new opportunities for both of us. "Congratulations, Dr. Basil," she said when I called to share the news. "I told you we were going to change the entire game." That same week, Thomas received confirmation that the State Insurance Commission had opened a formal investigation into Robert's business practices. Multiple clients had filed complaints after Thomas provided them with documentation of how their policies had been manipulated. The investigation would take months to complete, but the preliminary findings were damning enough to suspend Robert's license pending a full review. Without his ability to sell insurance, my father's income disappeared overnight. For the first time since this nightmare began, I felt like I was winning instead of just surviving. My phone rang that evening with a number I recognized but hadn't heard from in months. Against my better judgment, I answered. "Basil." Sarah's voice was shaky, lacking its usual confident tone. "We need to talk." Johns Hopkins Medical School exceeded every expectation I had harbored about elite medical education. The campus buzzed with intellectual energy, cutting-edge research, and a collaborative atmosphere that stood in stark contrast to the competitive pressure cooker environment I had experienced at Harvard. Here, students and faculty were united by a genuine passion for advancing medical knowledge and improving patient care. My professors were impressed not just by my academic abilities, but by the maturity and perspective I had gained from my unconventional journey. Dr. Michael Rodriguez, who taught advanced anatomy, often used my construction experience as a teaching tool when discussing the structural engineering principles that governed human physiology. Basil understands load-bearing better than most residents. He would tell the class after I correctly identified why certain surgical approaches would fail due to compromised structural integrity. Real-world experience gives you insights that can't be learned from textbooks alone. The research component of my program was even more fulfilling. Working alongside Dr. Weston, I was contributing to groundbreaking studies on minimally invasive techniques for correcting complex congenital heart defects in infants. Our preliminary results suggested that we could reduce surgery time by 40% while improving long-term outcomes for the smallest patients. You have an intuitive understanding of how children's bodies respond to surgical stress, Dr. Weston observed as we reviewed data from our latest clinical trial. Most surgeons have to learn through years of experience what seems to come naturally to you. The irony wasn't lost on me that my parents had always dismissed pediatric medicine as less prestigious than other specialties. The work we were doing had the potential to save thousands of children's lives and revolutionize cardiac surgery for patients under 2 years old. If that wasn't prestigious enough for them, their definition of success was fundamentally flawed. My personal life was flourishing as well. Away from the toxic environment of my family, I had discovered an ability to form genuine friendships based on mutual respect rather than competition or manipulation. My study group included brilliant students from diverse backgrounds who challenged me intellectually while supporting me emotionally. Thomas visited Baltimore regularly, bringing updates on his legal campaign against my father and stories from the construction sites that kept me grounded in the real world outside academia. Our relationship had evolved into something I had never experienced with my biological father: unconditional support, combined with honest feedback. You're becoming the man Robert could have been if he hadn't chosen greed over integrity, Thomas told me during one of his visits. Your grandmother would be proud of what you're accomplishing with the education fund she left for you. That education fund was at the center of Thomas's legal strategy. Bank records proved that Robert had systematically diverted money intended for both Thomas's and Robert's children into personal investment accounts. The theft of my inheritance was a felony that carried serious criminal penalties. But our legal victory was creating unexpected consequences back in Connecticut. With Robert's insurance license suspended and his business under criminal investigation, my family's financial situation was deteriorating rapidly. The first sign came through social media. Sarah's Instagram posts, which had once showcased expensive restaurants and designer clothes, suddenly featured discount shopping trips and community college brochures. Her plans to attend Harvard had been quietly abandoned when she failed the MCAT for the 3rd time. Then came the phone call I had been dreading. Basil. Sarah's voice lacked its usual confidence, replaced by something that sounded suspiciously like desperation. We need to talk. I almost hung up immediately, but curiosity got the better of me. After months of silence, what could she possibly want to discuss? I know you're probably still angry about everything that happened. She continued, her words coming out in a rushed tumble. But I need you to understand that it wasn't really my idea. Mom and Dad pressured me into going along with their plan. I was just 18 and scared of disappointing them. The attempted manipulation was so transparent that I almost laughed. Sarah was 21 now, hardly a confused teenager, and she had enthusiastically participated in destroying my life for months. What do you want, Sarah? I want to apologize, she said, her voice breaking in what sounded like genuine emotion. And I want to warn you about something. Mom and Dad are planning to contact your school with more lies about you. They found out about your success at Johns Hopkins, and they're furious that you're doing better than ever. The warning sent chills down my spine. My parents had already proven they would stop at nothing to control the narrative around their family, even if it meant destroying their son's future. They're going to claim that you've been harassing us and making threats, Sarah continued. Dad's lawyer is preparing a restraining order that would make you look unstable to any potential employers or medical programs. But Sarah's warning came too late. The next morning, I received an email from Johns Hopkins Student Affairs Office requesting an urgent meeting to discuss concerning allegations that had been made against me by my family. Sitting in Associate Dean Patricia Murphy's office, I listened with growing horror as she read from official-looking documents that painted me as a dangerous individual who had been making threatening phone calls and stalking my family since being dismissed from Harvard for mental health issues. I want to be clear that we take these allegations seriously. Dean Murphy said, her tone professional but concerned. However, we also want to give you an opportunity to respond before taking any action. The documents were masterfully crafted lies complete with fabricated dates and detailed descriptions of threatening behavior I had never exhibited. My father's lawyer had learned from their previous mistakes and created a more sophisticated deception this time. But they had underestimated Dr. Weston's connections and my own commitment to documentation. For months, I had been keeping detailed records of all my interactions with my family, including phone records, text message screenshots, and witness statements from Thomas about my whereabouts during the alleged incidents. Dean Murphy. I said calmly, I think there are some things about my family's history that you should know. Over the next 2 hours, I presented a comprehensive case that exposed my parents' pattern of manipulation and fraud. Dr. Weston joined the meeting remotely, providing her perspective as both my mentor and a victim of my father's business practices. Thomas drove down from Connecticut with bank records proving the theft of my inheritance and documented evidence of Robert's insurance fraud. The meeting that had begun as an investigation into my alleged misconduct ended with Johns Hopkins legal department opening their own inquiry into my family's attempt to interfere with my education. But Sarah's betrayal went even deeper than I had realized. That evening, I discovered that she had been systematically attempting to sabotage my reputation online, creating fake social media accounts to spread rumors about my character and professional competence. The fake accounts traced back to her IP address by Johns Hopkins cybersecurity team had posted detailed accusations of sexual harassment, academic dishonesty, and unstable behavior across multiple platforms frequented by medical professionals. The strategy backfired spectacularly when the university's investigation revealed the systematic nature of the deception. Instead of harming my reputation, Sarah's actions created a documented pattern of harassment that could be used against my entire family in both civil and criminal proceedings. Dr. Weston was furious when she learned about the online attacks. "Your sister has crossed a line that puts her in legal jeopardy," she said during our emergency meeting with the university's general counsel. Creating false allegations of sexual harassment isn't just defamation. It's a criminal act that can result in felony charges. The university took swift action. Within 48 hours, all of Sarah's fake accounts were permanently banned, and reports of the harassment were filed with both local police and the Maryland Attorney General's office. Johns Hopkins also used their considerable influence to alert other medical schools about the systematic attempt to interfere with my education. The ironic result was that Sarah had effectively blacklisted herself from any future medical school applications. The documented evidence of her deceptive behavior would follow her permanently, ensuring that no reputable institution would ever risk admitting someone with her history of academic sabotage. Meanwhile, my own reputation was stronger than ever. The university's investigation had revealed not just my innocence, but the exceptional character I had demonstrated in overcoming my family's betrayals. Faculty members who had been unaware of my background now understood the full scope of what I had accomplished despite impossible obstacles. "You've handled this situation with remarkable grace and professionalism," Dean Murphy told me during our follow-up meeting. "Many students would have been destroyed by this level of family dysfunction. Instead, you've used it as motivation to become stronger and more resilient." That resilience would be tested again sooner than I expected. 3 days later, Thomas called with news that would change everything. "Robert's business is finished," he said, his voice grim. "The State Insurance Commission has revoked his license permanently and filed criminal charges for fraud and embezzlement. He's looking at 5 to 10 years in prison." But the collapse of my father's empire had created a new crisis. Without his income and facing massive legal bills, my parents were losing their house and facing bankruptcy. Worse yet, the stress was affecting my mother's health, in ways that would soon force me to confront the ultimate test of forgiveness and family loyalty. 3 years had passed since I walked away from my family's toxic manipulation, and the distance had allowed me to build a life I could barely have imagined during those dark days of sleeping in my car. I was now in my second year of residency at Johns Hopkins, specializing in pediatric cardiac surgery under Dr. Weston's expert guidance. My days were filled with the purposeful exhaustion of hospital rotations, research conferences, and the profound satisfaction of helping children overcome life-threatening heart defects. Just last month, I had assisted in a groundbreaking surgery that successfully repaired a complex congenital anomaly in a 3-month-old infant. The parents' tears of joy as they held their healthy baby made every sacrifice worthwhile. My personal life had flourished as well. I was engaged to Dr. Jennifer Martinez, a brilliant emergency medicine resident who understood the demands of our profession and shared my commitment to serving underserved populations. We had met during a particularly challenging case involving a pediatric trauma patient, and her combination of clinical skill and genuine compassion had immediately impressed me. Thomas had become the father figure I never had, celebrating my achievements with genuine pride and offering wisdom gained from his own journey of rebuilding after betrayal. Dr. Weston treated me like the son she never had, including me in family gatherings and supporting my career with opportunities I could never have imagined. The contrast between my chosen family and my biological one became starkly apparent when I received an unexpected phone call on a Tuesday morning in March. I was reviewing surgical notes for an upcoming conference when my phone buzzed with a number I hadn't seen in years. Against my better judgment, I answered. Basil. My mother's voice was weak, lacking the commanding tone I remembered from our last conversation. This is Linda, your mother. As if I could forget. I need to talk to you. She continued her words, punctuated by labored breathing. Something has happened, and I need your help. The pause that followed stretched uncomfortably long. Part of me wanted to hang up immediately, but the physician in me recognized the sound of genuine physical distress in her voice. I have cancer, Basil. Stage 3 breast cancer. The doctors say I need surgery, but our insurance... Her voice broke, and I heard her struggling to compose herself. Robert's legal troubles have destroyed our coverage. The procedure I need costs more than we can afford. The irony was almost too perfect to be real. The woman who had threatened to destroy my medical career was now asking for my help as a surgeon. I'm sorry to hear about your diagnosis, I said carefully, my medical training overriding my personal feelings. Have you consulted with oncologists about treatment options? The best surgeon for my type of cancer is at Mass General. She continued, her voice gaining strength as she launched into what sounded like a prepared speech. But he requires payment up front because of our insurance situation. We need someone with connections, someone who could convince him to operate without the usual financial guarantees. She paused, and I could hear my father's voice in the background coaching her on what to say next. Family is family, Basil, she said, echoing the same words they had used to justify their betrayal years earlier. We gave you life, and now you have the skills and connections to save mine. Surely you can understand the moral obligation here. The manipulation was exactly what I had expected, but hearing it delivered by someone facing a life-threatening illness still felt jarring. My medical training demanded compassion for all patients regardless of personal history. But my human heart recoiled from being used once again. Have you explored all your treatment options? I asked, keeping my voice professionally neutral. Don't you understand? My father's voice cut in, as he apparently took the phone from my mother. We've researched your career, Basil. We know exactly what you're capable of now. You're not just a student anymore. You're a surgeon with access to the best medical facilities in the country. The conversation that followed revealed the depth of their ongoing surveillance of my life. They knew about my engagement to Jennifer, my research publications, my growing reputation in pediatric surgery. They had been tracking my progress not out of parental pride, but as potential assets they might someday exploit. "You owe us this." Robert continued, his tone carrying the same entitled authority I remembered from childhood. "Everything you've achieved is built on the foundation we provided. The least you can do is use your success to help your mother when she needs it most." But the real shock came when Sarah got on the phone, her voice thick with tears that sounded genuinely desperate. "Basil, please," she sobbed. "I know I made mistakes, but Mom is dying. She might only have months to live without this surgery. You're the only one in the family with the connections to make this happen." For a moment, I almost felt sympathy for her. Almost. "Where were these concerns about family loyalty when you were trying to steal my Harvard scholarship?" I asked quietly. "I was young and stupid," she replied, her voice breaking. "I've learned from my mistakes. I'm different now. But this isn't about me, it's about saving Mom's life. Don't let your anger toward me kill our mother." The emotional manipulation was expertly crafted, designed to make me feel responsible for my mother's fate, while absolving them of responsibility for the consequences of their own actions. But they had underestimated how much I had learned about their tactics over the years. "I'll need to review her medical records," I said finally. "Send me everything from her oncologist, along with the treatment recommendations and insurance documentation." The relief in my mother's voice was palpable. "Thank you, Basil. I knew you would do the right thing when it really mattered." After I hung up, I sat in my office, reviewing the complexity of the situation. Dr. Weston found me there an hour later, staring out the window at the Baltimore skyline. "You look like someone just asked you to perform surgery on your worst enemy," she observed, settling into the chair across from my desk. I told her about the phone call, watching her expression shift from surprise to concern to something that looked like righteous anger. "They have incredible nerve," she said when I finished. "After everything they did to destroy your career, they expect you to rescue them from the consequences of their own actions." But Dr. Weston's response wasn't what I expected. Instead of advising me to refuse their request, she leaned forward with the calculating expression she wore when designing complex surgical procedures. "Basil," she said slowly, "what if this situation gave us an opportunity to demonstrate exactly who you've become, not just as a surgeon, but as a human being who's learned to rise above the people who tried to destroy him?" The plan she outlined over the next hour was elegant in its justice and devastating in its completeness. We would help my mother get the surgery she needed, but not through the manipulation and exploitation she was expecting. Instead, we would use every resource at our disposal to ensure she received the best possible care, while simultaneously demonstrating the stark contrast between their approach to family loyalty and mine. "The question isn't whether you should help her," Dr. Weston concluded. "The question is whether you want to help her in a way that transforms this situation into your final victory over everything they represent." As I considered her proposal, I realized that this moment would define not just my relationship with my family, but the kind of person I had chosen to become, despite their influence. The golden child had asked for my help. Now it was time to show them what real strength looked like. The coffee shop I chose for our meeting was deliberately modest, a small place in Stamford, Connecticut, that served excellent coffee in mismatched mugs to customers who valued substance over appearance. It was exactly the kind of establishment my parents would have dismissed as beneath their standards during their years of prosperity. I arrived 15 minutes early and selected a corner table where I could observe their entrance. The wait gave me time to review the folder of documents I'd prepared, each page representing a carefully calculated response to their desperate manipulation. When they walked through the door, the physical transformation was shocking. My father, once an imposing figure in expensive suits, now wore an ill-fitting sport coat that had clearly been purchased at a discount retailer. The confident swagger that had intimidated business rivals and family members alike had been replaced by the hunched shoulders of a man facing criminal prosecution. My mother looked frail in a way that had nothing to do with her cancer diagnosis. The woman who had once commanded social gatherings with her perfectly styled hair and designer clothes now seemed diminished wearing a simple sweater that couldn't hide her anxiety. But it was Sarah who had changed the most. The golden child who had once radiated entitled confidence now worked at a makeup counter in a department store, living with our parents in their cramped apartment because she couldn't afford rent on her retail salary. Her dreams of medical school had died along with her third failed MCAT attempt and the revelation of her documented harassment campaign against me. They approached my table with the cautious expressions of people who knew they were asking for charity from someone they had tried to destroy. "Basil," my mother said softly as they sat down, "thank you for agreeing to see us." I studied their faces for a moment, seeing the desperation they were trying to hide behind forced smiles and practiced humility. These were the same people who had thrown me out of their house, destroyed my relationships, and tried to sabotage my education. Now they needed me, and the irony was almost too perfect. "I've reviewed your medical records." I began, my voice calm and professional. "Stage 3 invasive ductal carcinoma with lymph node involvement. The treatment plan your oncologist recommended is appropriate, and the surgeon at Mass General has an excellent reputation." Relief flickered across their faces as they interpreted my clinical assessment as agreement to help them. "So you'll contact him?" my father asked eagerly. "Use your connections to arrange the surgery." I reached into my folder and pulled out a business card, sliding it across the table toward my mother. "Dr. Jennifer Martinez coordinates our hospital's charitable foundation," I said, watching their confusion as they read the card. "She'll be handling your case personally." The foundation I had established with Dr. Weston's help provided free medical care for families who had been victimized by insurance fraud and predatory business practices. It was funded by donations from grateful patients, recovered assets from fraud prosecutions, and my own growing income as a specialist surgeon. "I don't understand," my mother said, looking at the card as if it might disappear. "Your surgery will be performed by Dr. Catherine Williams at Johns Hopkins." I continued. "She's one of the top breast cancer specialists in the country, and her outcomes are significantly better than the surgeon you originally consulted. The procedure will be completely free, including all follow-up care and reconstruction if you choose it." The shock on their faces was worth every moment of the years I had spent building toward this possibility. "But there's something you need to understand." I continued, my voice gaining strength as I delivered the message I had been preparing for years. "This help isn't coming from your son. It's coming from the charitable foundation I established to help victims of insurance fraud." I pulled out another set of documents, these bearing the official seal of the Maryland Attorney General's office. "Your case qualified for our assistance because you're victims of the same predatory business practices that Robert used against hundreds of other families. The insurance policies you thought would protect you were systematically modified to exclude coverage for exactly the kind of medical crisis you're facing now." My father's face turned ashen as he realized the implications. The same techniques he had used to defraud his clients had been turned against his own family by other unscrupulous agents who had learned from his playbook. "The beautiful irony," I continued, "is that your treatment is being funded partially by the restitution payments Robert will be making to his own fraud victims. Some of the money he stole from other families is now paying for Linda's cancer surgery." But I wasn't finished. The final folder contained documents that would reshape their understanding of everything that had happened to our family. "Was pain, Sarah," I said, turning to address my sister directly, "your admission to Harvard was never going to happen. Not because you weren't smart enough, but because Robert never had the money to pay for it. He spent your education fund on stock speculation and country club memberships years before you even applied. The bank statements and investment records I spread across the table told the complete story of our father's financial mismanagement and deception. The golden child had been a fantasy built on stolen money and sustained by lies. Everything you sacrificed my future for was based on a foundation of fraud, I continued. There was never any choice between supporting me or supporting Sarah. Robert had already stolen both our inheritances to fund his lifestyle. Sarah began crying finally, understanding that she had been as much a victim of our father's manipulation as I had been, but her tears couldn't undo the years of cruelty she had actively participated in. The difference between us, I said gently, is that when I discovered the truth, I chose to build something better instead of tearing someone else down. I stood up, signaling that our meeting was coming to an end, but I had one final message to deliver. Linda, you'll receive the best possible medical care because that's the kind of person I've chosen to be, not because you deserve it based on how you treated me. Sarah, there are educational assistance programs available through our foundation if you genuinely want to rebuild your life through honest work and ethical choices. I paused, looking directly at my father for the first time since they had arrived. And Robert, your legal troubles are a consequence of the choices you made long before you decided to destroy my Harvard career. I didn't create your problems. I simply refused to be destroyed by them. As I gathered my documents and prepared to leave, my mother reached across the table to grab my hand. Basil, does this mean you forgive us? Can we be a family again? I looked down at her hand, touching mine, remembering all the times as a child when that same hand had comforted me after nightmares or celebrated my academic achievements. For a moment, I felt an echo of the love I had once believed was unconditional. Forgiveness isn't about pretending the past didn't happen, I said quietly. It's about choosing not to let other people's actions define who you become. I forgave you years ago, Linda. That's why you're getting the surgery. I gently removed my hand from hers and stood up. But forgiveness doesn't require me to expose myself to further manipulation. You'll always be my biological family, but Thomas and Dr. Weston are my real family now. They earned that relationship through love and support, not through DNA and emotional blackmail. As I walked toward the door, I turned back one final time. The golden child you always wanted was never Sarah. It was the person I became after you threw me away. The irony is that you created exactly what you claim to value, but you were too blinded by your own prejudices to recognize it. Outside the coffee shop, Thomas was waiting by his truck, ready to drive me back to Baltimore, where Jennifer was preparing for our wedding next month. Dr. Weston had flown in from Johns Hopkins to attend the foundation board meeting, where we would be approving funding for 12 new families, including the one I had just left behind. "How did it go?" Thomas asked as I climbed into the passenger seat. "Exactly as planned," I replied, feeling a sense of closure that had been years in the making. Justice served with a side of mercy. As we drove south toward Maryland, I reflected on the journey that had brought me to this moment. The family that had tried to destroy me for not being what they wanted had inadvertently created exactly what the world needed: a surgeon who understood that healing meant more than technical skill, a man who knew the difference between loyalty and manipulation, and a person who had learned to build rather than tear down. The golden child they had always wanted was me, but only after I stopped trying to earn their approval and started living up to my own standards instead. My phone buzzed with a text from Jennifer. "Surgery scheduled for next Tuesday. Your mother's prognosis is excellent. See you at home, Dr. Hero." I smiled, thinking about the life I had built from the ashes of the one they had tried to burn down. Tomorrow, I would return to Johns Hopkins, where I would continue pioneering surgical techniques that saved children's lives. Next month, I would marry the woman who loved me for who I was rather than what I could provide. Next year, Thomas and I would break ground on a new medical clinic that would provide free care for families affected by insurance fraud. The greatest victory wasn't proving that I was better than they thought I was. It was discovering that their opinion of me had never mattered at all. Real success came from building a life based on service integrity and genuine love rather than competition manipulation and conditional approval. As we crossed the state line into Maryland, I realized that the scared young man who had slept in his car outside a Walmart parking lot was gone forever. In his place was someone stronger, kinder, and infinitely more capable of making the world a better place. Sometimes the best families are the ones you choose for yourself. Sometimes the greatest gifts come disguised as devastating losses. And sometimes the people who try to destroy you end up giving you exactly what you need to become, who you were always meant to be. The golden child had finally come home. Thank you for joining me on this journey of overcoming family betrayal and finding strength in the darkest moments. This story reminds us that our worth isn't determined by how others treat us, but by how we choose to respond when faced with impossible challenges. Have you ever had to choose between toxic family loyalty and your own dreams? How do you think you would handle discovering that the people who should support you most are actively working against your success? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button to help others find it. Don't forget to subscribe for more stories about overcoming life's biggest challenges, and share this with anyone who might need to hear that it's possible to build something beautiful from the ashes of betrayal. Remember, your real family consists of the people who celebrate your victories rather than sabotage your dreams. Choose them wisely, and never be afraid to walk away from those who don't deserve the gift of your love and loyalty.